New videos every day.
Whenever you stress the body, fat burning is the first thing that gets shut down.
Right.
You don't have time to, if there's an emergency, there's no time to burn fat. I need energy now. Let's not mess with fat, even though there's more energy in it. So I want to be a fat burner. And there's so many ways that gets interfered with, especially with things I take into my diet.
Life, wisdom. Dr. Balanzi, is the paleo diet a safe and effective way to lose weight? What are your thoughts?
The paleo diet's good for a lot of things, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everybody has to eat that diet specifically, because it can be modified in many ways. The biggest problem I think that we have is that everybody's looking for the right diet that's going to apply to everybody, and there is not one. There is no average 70-kilogram person. You have to consider your body and what works for you. However, in the majority, I've seen the paleo diet do a lot of good things, mainly because it gets people away from a lot of processed food, unless you listen to the media. So understand that the paleo diet starts with a good protein source. Usually it's a lean meat, and lean is key. But you're eating lean meats, you're eating primarily vegetables, and then some fruit. But we're talking about things growing above the ground that the hunter-gatherer idea applies to. You don't want to do a lot of tubers. My problem is that people tend to do their own modifications. At least sometimes it's with sweet potatoes. But paleo really is above the ground vegetables.
Right.
And then nuts and seeds, but also above the ground. So you're not eating peanuts and cashews and stuff. What you have to remember is if you're eating paleo, you're not eating any grains. There's no grain consumption. You're not eating legumes, which are beans and such. And you're not, of course, eating processed food and all kinds of things like that. You're not eating dairy either. So it's a very clean diet. And so any kind of elimination diet, eliminating mainly the processed food, is probably going to show benefit. A lot of people do very well on the paleo idea. And again, it's probably mostly because they're getting away from processed foods.
Right.
But people do have problems with dairy. Some people, not everybody. People do have many problems with gluten and basically with the processing of the grains. Most people consume their grains in the form of flour, not as a whole grain. So even just making the shift from processed to unprocessed can make a good situation and help the body to function better. And that's what we're looking for in order to lose weight.
Right. So, there's a lot of different diets out there. And, for me personally, it's hard for me to kind of commit myself to like really stringent guidelines. Like, especially for me, I really like the legumes. I like beans. I like nuts. That would be like kind of the hardest thing for me to give up, so to speak.
Right.
Do you think that there's benefit in kind of having a really significantly like kind of limited diet like that? Or, as you just mentioned, you think kind of the primary benefit comes from cutting out the carbs or cutting out the processed grains, cutting out the refined sugar and all of that kind of stuff. But these other kind of, stringent guidelines of, no this, no that, no below the ground vegetables, things like that. Is that really necessary if we want to lose weight?
I don't think it's necessary, and it's probably not even practical.
Right. And that's another big thing. How practical is this diet going to be?
You look at holidays, you look at celebrations. It's not that you have to be perfect every single day. If you're generally changing to better foods, it's going to make a difference. If you've got a problem you're trying to address, I would probably be more strict with you. If you really are trying to concentrate right now on a period of losing some weight, and I don't even want to say I want you to lose weight. I want you to get lean, and I want you to get healthy. It's different than simply losing weight. Because I can lock you in a room without food and you'll lose weight, but you're not going to be as healthy. Right. I want to make sure your body composition is changing in the right way. I want to make sure that we're enhancing the function. But if you've got an objective, maybe you take a short period of time and you get real strict with something like the paleo diet, modified or not. If you're a vegetarian, I'm going to have to allow you some legumes because I have to consider the fact that you need some protein.
Right.
So again, there's ways to modify it. It doesn't mean you never, ever can have dairy. It doesn't mean you can never have a slice of bread. But also understand what the basic diet is and what would be best and how you're modifying it. And one of my biggest problems present day is you find a diet like the paleo diet that actually is helping people get healthier and lose weight. It's the way our ancestors ate. That's what we're really trying to approach. And then you have the media coming out and saying, well, then I'm going to let you have paleo bread. Well, there's no such thing.
Right.
Just because I ground up a bunch of nuts and made flour doesn't mean it's any necessarily that much healthier, or rice flour or whatever we want to talk about. But if we're going paleo, we wouldn't even talk about rice. The thing is that it doesn't automatically give it health just because it gave it a name.
Right.
And it's the same with gluten. We've talked about that before.
Exactly.
Gluten-free does not confer health. If I have a reactive problem to gluten, or I have celiac disease for that matter, then I'm going to be helped by going to gluten-free flours even. But it doesn't mean I've made myself healthier. I'm still eating flour.
You're still eating something that's been processed versus something that's minimally processed.
Rice flour actually happens to have a really high glycemic index. I mean, talk about impact on your sugar. Yet all these people go eat rice crackers and rice flour and they think they're doing so much better.
Right.
Well, not necessarily.
Right.
You've gotten away from one problem and probably created others.
Right.
So look at what you're doing as a diet. Is it really originally what the diet was intended to be? And my biggest problem with diets overall is that someday you have to get back to real life. So again, you might do a certain period, but you can modify. You can allow yourself. Good does make up for a little bit of bad. So there are times when it's okay. And there are even ways to use it as a tool. Sometimes I may want to do a little bit more sugar in the way of getting my body to be trained better to handle it. And I can use an insulin response, especially if I'm trying to build muscle or something like that. So if I plan it out right, I can actually get some benefit. Right. There are times when I might stimulate my body to action. We've talked about that before, the effect that a few molecules can have on the body. So it's not that it always has to be perfect. But if generally you're getting away from the processed food, that's where I see the biggest advantage.
Right. So in a previous video, we were talking specifically about obesity and some of the other issues with our body that could actually be causing us to have significant weight gain, preventing us from being able to lose weight. And I think that video just shares a lot of really, really valuable information. And so one of the things, that I've found is that, as you mentioned, people kind of look for this quick fix. They go to this diet and they just kind of think that, if I just change my diet, that's going to help me lose weight. And what you kind of explained in that video is, well, there's actually all of these other factors, talking about how well is your digestive system functioning, as we were talking about in the previous video, our accumulation of toxins and how well is our body able to detoxify and all of these different things. So I think it's important to consider for people that are trying to lose a significant amount of weight or that have really been struggling with weight gain for a long time, that certainly changing our diet is an important key. But there's also other things that need to be considered that in the weight loss industry and the diet industry are completely kind of mulled over and not really addressed at all. Right. And I think that is very unfortunate.
Well, if you want to break it down, the most important thing that you're going to have to control your weight is the ability to burn fat. And the biggest problem that I see is if you're always overloading the body with carbohydrates, they're not bad. Your body can handle a certain amount, but this overwhelming amount that people eat, they basically become sugar burners. They literally lose their fat burning ability because whenever you stress the body, fat burning is the first thing that gets shut down.
Right.
You don't have time to, if there's an emergency, there's no time to burn fat. I need energy now. Let's not mess with fat, even though there's more energy in it. So I want to be a fat burner. And there's so many ways that gets interfered with, especially with things I take into my diet. If I'm always eating carbohydrates, it's an easy thing to use and the body will take the easy route. But if I train my body and eat the right nutrients, then I become a fat burner that controls my weight. It's all about, again, the body working the way that it should.
Right.
If I'm eating foods that, let's say, enhance the fat burning, if I'm getting my nutrients in, because I'm going to need methyl groups, I'm going to need sulfur, I need all these nutrients to do the process. I got to run this thing called the Krebs cycle, healthy mitochondria. These are considerations that you have to, it's about the function again. So simply looking at my pants and thinking they're too tight and skipping meals is not really a good answer. In fact, I might even put my body into a completely different response than I wanted and end up gaining weight on a shred of lettuce. I want a properly functioning body that acts as fat stores. I want a fat burning physiology. So I've got to think about how to train that to happen.
Right. And we have talked at length in our different videos about how to do that and the problems with consuming too many carbohydrates, too much sugar, and kind of creating this environment in the body where it knows there's going to be plenty of sugar in the blood. There's no need to metabolize fat, as you pointed out. And yeah, I think that is kind of at the crux of this problem of obesity. And I mean, weight loss is a $60 billion industry. This is a huge problem that people are having, that you're looking for all of these different solutions to try and lose weight. So kind of moving back over to talking about paleo and maybe how a paleo diet affects the functioning of our body. Does it give us everything that we need? Would that be a sustainable diet if you actually practically could have it your whole life? Would it be a good diet to really, take care of your health and make sure that your body can function the way that it needs to?
I think there's a large proportion of people that I could probably say most people, I won't even put it most, I would say probably over half are going to do very well by sticking strictly to the paleo diet. They're going to be much more healthy just because their body's not going to be able to handle these other things necessarily. They're probably not adapted well to be able to use dairy products. They're not going to be able to handle high amounts of sugar. Maybe their ancestors grew up in deserts or something, so they're very thrifty with their carbohydrates. So these people are going to benefit because they're getting the nutrients and the things that they need. And you have to consider also that the digestive tract is so very important. You don't want to do damage to it, because that's where everything starts. It's even our second brain, maybe our first brain. There's neurotransmitters. There's a lot going on, and messages are then carried to the body. So again, it's this communication. What am I communicating? So first and foremost, am I getting sufficient protein? I don't have to eat enormous amounts of protein, but am I getting enough? Can I actually break it down and deliver the amino acids so my body can function?
Right.
And so the paleo diet focuses somewhat on that. Am I getting the phytonutrients and the vitamins, the minerals, and the methyl groups, and everything we could talk about, which plants are loaded with? What a great package. I don't know who designed them, but you can just go pick them up and eat them and get all this good stuff.
They give you everything you need.
So that great package allows the body to function again. And with better function, I have better control of things. And fruits are good too. I'm not a real fan of overdoing the fruits because they don't have near the value. They really don't.
And it's a lot of sugar.
And you get sugar, you get soluble fiber, you get some nutrients, and fruits aren't without value, but vegetables are so much more. So when you talk about the paleo diet, you talk about eating primarily vegetables. And remember that for Paleo Man, if we want to go back there, we believe that fruits were seasonal and scarcely available. Right. You didn't have them all the time like we do now. So you have to consider that as well. And then we need some good fats. So, you've got the nuts and seeds and things like that. If I'm eating that way, I'm really allowing my body to work better.
Right.
Now, as we talked about, now what's realistic? Some people find it very difficult to stick with just those foods because we've got events and holidays and mothers and,
and hunger.
and hunger. Yeah. But I can say that when I have people eating those real foods that would be in the paleo diet, if we're strictly doing the paleo diet, that they just do better. So that's what we're looking for. And it doesn't mean that we can't once in a while enjoy things. Again, we've talked before about the fact that take a day off and just enjoy yourself. But generally, on the other days, you're eating well.
Right.
That's what's going to pay off. It's the people who every day are opening that cellophane package and, pulling out whatever's in it. It's,
right.
Try some things your ancestors ate because your body's used to that.
How important is the quality of the protein or the source of the protein? And maybe what tips or advice would you give to people in, helping to make sure that they do pick out a good high quality protein to have in their diet?
It's the same as if you're going to go get a piece of fruit, there are little tricks people have to make sure the fruit's going to taste good, right? You pound on the watermelon, whatever. There's criteria. My criteria for proteins is that if I'm going to consume animal protein, that it was a healthy animal. Did that animal eat what it was supposed to eat? Or did it stand in its own excrement and get fed too much sugar and flour? Was it given growth factors? Were chemicals put into it, antibiotics and other things? That's not a healthy animal.
Exactly.
So if I'm eating an animal that got to run around and eat what it's supposed to eat, like grass or something, and it actually moved around a little bit, and I'm going to feel that it was happier, even mentally, for as much as an animal can be happy, and I'm sure they can, then I have a lot more confidence in that protein source. And in fact, if you study those proteins and the fat in the animals, you find a difference.
Right.
The healthy animal has healthier composition. The animals that we tend to find a lot probably aren't
Factory farmed animals.
Factory farmed animals are different animals.
There's,
and they don't confer the same benefit to us.
Right. And there's actually, when you mention the different things that they feed the animals, not only the grain diet, but there's a chemical called ractopine, which is given to help make the animal more muscular. And it's actually been banned in over 100 countries. And it's